Good morning to everybody. I want to thank Philip Keller for sponsoring the short Torah for Shabbat Parshat Vayikrah. It's Le'ilui Nishmat, her father, Chaim Zelik ben Israel, that his Yotzat was on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and Yiratzon, that B'schut the Dvar Torah, amongst other things that she sponsored, that the neshama should have an aliyah b'Gan Eden. We're now on the eve of Pesach, basically, another week's time, and we all know that Pesach is called Chag HaCherut, the Chag, the festival of our redemption, of our freedom more accurately. But in the Zohar, it says that there's another name for Chag HaMatzot or Chag HaPesach, and that is the festival of Emunah, the festival of faith. And in fact, the Zohar also calls that the matzah is called the bread of faith, lechet behimnuta. And I think that this is more than anything so essential for our time, and that is to that when we come off the Seder and we complete the Seder, Yetz Hashem, that we come out of the Seder with a renewed and strengthened faith. How much behemet does our door need this message, that the message of faith of Emunah? It's something that is not so very simple, but it's something which hasn't seeped in as much as it should have. I mean, if you think of it, that even like a couple of years ago, and even now today, that people, there was this Reformed clergyman who got up and he gave night drashot on the night of Pesach, and what he said is that he spoke about this thing and that thing, and they asked him, but and this is true story, it's not an anecdote. They said to him, but you don't even believe that there was an Exodus. So they said, correct, he doesn't believe in the Exodus, but there's nice ideas, and there's nice artistic value. It's very fine principles that we can come out from the Seder, even though they didn't believe that such a thing happened. Event happens. So the first thing of Emunah on the night of the Seder is to emphasize that we're speaking about an event that happened. And as Ben Gurion once said, if you would ask an American who is very rooted in his culture, you would ask him, what date was it that the Mayflower arrived in New York? What exactly did the sailors and the people on board, what did they eat? They wouldn't be able to tell you. That happened 250 years ago. But if you'd ask now the average child that what happened 3,000 years ago, mamash, not a couple of hundred years ago, 3,000 years, what time did the Jewish people go out of Egypt? What was the date that they came out of Egypt? What was the things that they ate when they came out of Egypt? We've got a continued tradition of this Emunah, which is a continuation of, yes, that every single child, every person born into Am Yisrael knows that Pesach is a time in which there's a Tchadshut, a birth of our nation. But also the fact is that this is when our Emunah, our faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is rooted and was transformed on the night of the Seder. So it's very interesting that when we look at when Hashem first appeared to Moshe, he said to him, Moshe didn't want to go into redeem the Jewish people, because he said, "Haim lo yaminuni," they won't believe me, they won't have faith in me. And we see, though, that in the end that Hashem showed and told Moshe that don't worry, the Jewish people, even though you can't see it, when you look at the Jewish people in your time, what do you see? You just see an assimilated people so far from anything to do with being Jewish. And Hashem says, but they will have Emunah. And that's what this Pesach is about. Pesach is about reinforcing the Emunah that every single Jew has in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And even if we don't see it, but that's there. And that is what we are reinforcing. And they also hinted into the Korban, the Korban Pesach. Now, when we call it Pesach, but think of it. If we look at the timeline, the Jewish people brought a Korban Pesach, Erev Pesach. And then what they did was, before actually anything happened, they take the blood of the Korban Pesach and they smear it on the two sides of the door and onto the lintel, the post and on the lintel. And so what are they celebrating? This Korban is called Korban Pesach. What are they celebrating? They're celebrating something that hasn't yet happened. Hashem hasn't yet, at that time, when they slaughtered and dabbed the blood, Hashem hadn't yet started Makat HaBechorot. But this is exactly what we're saying, and this is what the Zohar is saying. It's saying is that the Jewish people are already celebrating in anticipation that they know that this for sure is what's going to happen. That's the emunah that the Jewish people have. And when you think of it, that further on in the time of Parshat Beshalach, where it describes Kriyat Yamsuf, it describes that the Jewish people, that Miriam went out, and what she did was she started to play the drums. What drum? I mean, the Jewish people, they didn't really have so much time to make for provisions, and that's why we eat the matzah in the way we did. But she's schlepping along drums. Yes, she knows that there's going to be a Geulah. She knows that there's going to be a celebration, even though at this point in time we can't see it. But that's what she's already preparing. Her emunah is that there's going to be a wonderful celebration, and that's why I'm taking now drums. I'm not worried about the bread. I'm worried about celebrating and expressing their emunah. I'd like to conclude that actually, when you think of it, when the Zohar speaks about that that Pesach is the Chag of Emunah, it's not only that the Jewish people have got Emunah in Hashem, but Chag HaPesach is Hashem's having Emunah in the Jewish people. That's what also Chag Emunah is. And the two are inextricably connected, the one with the other. When Hashem appears to Moshe Rabbeinu at the snare, and he says to him, you know what, there'll be a time, and I'm going to take you out of Mitzrayim, and on this very mountain where I appeared to you today, at the snare, at the burning bush, at this point in time, a little bit later, this is where you are going to accept the Torah. So Hashem's got emunah. The Jew, what does he see in front of them? Said an assimilated people, a people who are so far, a people who 4/5 of the Jewish people, they didn't make it out of Mitzrayim. That's how far and how terribly assimilated they are. But Hashem saw in the Jewish people that now maybe they're not Ra'oi to Gola. Now they're not worthy of Gola. But why is Hashem redeeming them? Because they've got a potential that only 7 weeks after Yetziat Mitzrayim, the potential is going to be realized that here on this very mountain, they'll be able to accept the Torah. Unbelievable. The Jewish people, Hashem says, I'm redeeming them now for the potential that they have, that later they'll be able to accept, and they will accept the Torah. So Chag Emunah Sameach to everybody, Chag Pesach Kasher Sameach to everybody, and let us come out of this Pesach with a renewed and a strengthened faith and bitachon in Kadosh Baruch Hu, together with all Am Yisrael. And as one of the hostages, Gam Berger, famously said, when she was in the helicopter and she held up this placard that she scribbled on the board, B'derech Emunah Bacharti, I have chosen the way of faith, and B'derech Emunah Chazarti, and I returned from my captivity through the emunah that Hashem has implanted in Am Yisrael. So Chag Sameach and Shabbat Shalom to everybody.